Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, guys, welcome to another special episode of the Strength Coach Podcast. I'm here with Gabriele, founder of Gabriele Fitness and Performance and KISS Marketing. I mean, so many author. I mean, we've been talking about last time we talked about two episodes ago. We talked about your new book. You're a renaissance man, in my opinion, Vince. You're looking good, by the way. I did see Vince at Perform Better. I will say, Vince, I didn't tell you there. I should have. You look good, man.
I always wonder like what people are thinking when they say that, because I had a couple people come up to me like and almost very like cautiously say, I got to tell you, you're looking really good. You're looking really good. And here's what that means. You look like a piece of shit before, right? And that's what that means. So that's the only thing I got from that is I was not looking good and now I'm looking better. So thank you all for telling me all of that.
Listen, I think if we go back to Strength Coach TV and we look at
this up. Yes, that is true.
Because the second time we did it, you look great. And I think I'm still going back to those times of, because I know you've done 75 hard a few times and you've been on this path for a couple of years.
It's funny. Andrew, Vanessa sends me videos every once in a while of me like back in the old days. Dude, I was a heifer. Like I was a big boy. Like I was really big when I was playing football. But when I opened my gym, I must have been like 250, 260. I was big.
Yeah, you're big. So, but hey, we last time we recorded, it was before this. So happy birthday! You turned 45 at the on June 18th. So
and apparently I'm looking good.
And you're looking good. I mean, you haven't looked better. So you actually wrote 50 nuggets of advice that you'd sent out to all in your newsletter. And I kind of was hoping we could go over some of these things because there's some really good nuggets in here. And I kind of want to, have you expand on them because actually in the newsletter, it was, they were just really quick snippets. So let's go over some things. And it's funny because in my book, it was the first question that we asked, and it was, how do you define success? And so your number one thing was, are you successful? It's totally dependent on your definition of success. It's the only definition that counts. Not your parents, not yours, not anyone on social media. I think that's a huge one because I think somebody my age, parents was a big and friends were a big idea. But then as this generation, you look on social media and it's such a huge influence for so many people, and they're looking at people and feeling like they're not successful. And you said if you don't feel successful, it could It could mean that you really are. You just haven't created your version. Just expand on this for people because it does. I think it starts here.
I think there's a lot of the more you can get clarity around things like your belief structure, your values, how you define success, which is what we're talking about. I know for us, and I've talked about this in the podcast, we have family core values that describe what are the things that we value most as a family. I don't know. I know some people never go through their life never thinking about this stuff, and maybe they're really happy and maybe they're totally fine and don't need to. I know for me, like this stuff really helps me because, I don't know, like I guess I was born with a mind that churns and thinks about stuff a lot, and it helps me a lot in my life to have clarity around this type of stuff. So I remember it was I don't know when the exact time in my life was, but I was having some degree of what people would look at as external success, right? I had a really, really successful gym. I was starting to do coaching, and in my own mind, I had a wife and kids and stuff, and like outside of it, you would think it's like that was success, right? And in my own mind, I didn't really feel that way, and for whatever reason, right? And then I think that the big reason was I haven't really had never had my definition of success. And once I actually did that, I felt a level of fulfillment that I haven't felt in a long time. And so that's because it's hard, like in an industry, especially with social media, you see all these things. You see people like, and you try to chase that, or you try to chase a relative, or you try to chase all these other things. And the best piece of advice for me is like, you just have to define that for yourself and what does success look like for you. And so I created a four-tiered definition of success, right? And the first one was sound physical and mental health. And I put that because I've talked about my dad before on the podcast, but my dad was a very successful businessman. And he was, a Wall Street guy and was just from what you would look on the outside look at success as well. But my dad got a stroke at 73, died at 77, and you know, missed a whole quarter of his life because he didn't take care of his health. Right. And so, and I don't know if I was ever going down that road because I was kind of in the industry. I think I got a little stroke of luck. And maybe God pushed me towards the industry to stay more fit and healthy. But at the end of the day, it's just like, all right, I think he was a great man, right? But that's not my definition of success, right? Is to work yourself into a frenzy and then pass on early, right? That's not taking anything away from him. Again, he's a great man. But at the end of the day, that's something that I wanted in my life. So that's my first one, was sound physical and mental health. Next one is a strong marriage. Right? I look at, my relationship with Vanessa as the most important relationship in my life. And, that's something that, if I can be making a lot of money and I can be doing well in my health and doing well, but if I come home and, we have a crappy marriage, that sucks, right? And that's not success to me. So that's a piece of it. Third one pillar for me was great relationships with my three kids and a few select friends. I don't really need a ton of friends, but the friendships I do have, I want them to be deep friendships. And that's why I chose relationships, right? What was my relationships with my kids? I can't, you know, am I going to put down, I want to be the best dad in the world? Like, no, that's not success, right? It's just like, no, but I know that I can do my part in helping create a good relationship with my kids and invest in relationships with um, my friends. And the final piece is I'm doing work that I enjoy, that makes a difference, and that pays me in abundance. That's kind of my work definition. I always want to do something that's adding value to people's lives. That's why I like gyms. It's just like if you just show up to work, you're changing someone's life. So that's all you got to do. All you literally got to do is show up, and you're doing great work for somebody else. And most people don't go through their life ever feeling that. Most people that sell insurance, that do finance, like they go through their entire life and they don't know what it's like to help somebody. And did I tell you the story about my buddy from Temple that I've been helping lose weight? I, I,
Yeah.
yeah.
He
Well,
lost a boatload of weight, and now people are going up to him, and he was like so excited
okay, so I
about.
did say that. Okay, I don't want
Yeah,
to repeat if I told it
yeah,
before,
sure.
but he's like shocked. I was like, oh my God, I'm like inspiring people. And it's like this so foreign thing, right? And so I always want to do something, and all my companies do that, right? Gabriel Fitness helps people change their life. I mean, we had our mastermind meeting, and I can't tell you how many handwritten letters came up and handed to me, and how many people verbally came up to me and says, you changed my life. Like it was like almost like I was like, dude, you guys gotta stop. Like it was almost getting like ridiculous. And it's just like, okay, after the meeting, like we're spent after those meetings, it was 3 days in a row at our shop, but I was just like, that was worth every second of energy because of the impact, that we're making. So I always want my work to be linked to something because I believe you can do both. I want to make, I don't get me wrong, I want to make a lot of money. Like I'm not shy about that. And honestly, I think my clients want me to be like that too. right? Because if I'm helping them make money, right, I should want to do that for myself. So, um, that is true, and I don't sugarcoat that. I don't hide behind that. Um, and so that's kind of my definition of success. It's those four pillars. And what I do is I give myself a score system on where I'm at periodically. I don't have a system like where I was like, I'll do this every month or I just like every once in a while when I feel like I need it, I just do it. And I give myself a score of 1 to 10. Where am I at with Vanessa? Where am I at with my health? Where am I at with business? Where am I at with my relationships with my kids? And I got to check myself. And as long as those three things, are on the right track, um, man, I'm a really happy person. And I feel really fulfilled and I feel successful.
Yeah.
And I can legitimately say I'm a successful person. And I think that's the most important thing is can you say it yourself? Can you feel successful? It doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter what other people think. Oh, you can be really successful. If you don't feel successful, what's it all for? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I want to go back really quick to part of what you said on the fourth one was, making the impact or loving what you do, but getting paid in abundance. And you said you're not shy about that. And I think it's so important because I interviewed 50 people for my book, and I think maybe only three or four of them brought up money for themselves. Carolyn Cooper Smith was, I think, the first one for me because she did one of the first interviews and she was like, and getting paid what you're worth and if not more, right? To be
Yeah.
part of this so you can enjoy things.
So I don't think people like to say it because they
You
feel like,
know,
oh, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say
yeah.
that. And I think that's just like hiding behind reality, right? It's just like, and I do think that there are a lot of people that say, "Oh, I don't do it for the money." And here's the thing, the people that say that have made a lot of money,
There you go.
right? And they don't do it for the money anymore because they fulfilled that need, right? But
Yeah,
when they were up and coming, they were driven by that. I can't say that's true for everybody, but
yeah.
yeah, no, I'm not. And here's the thing, I look at it as if you're going to help people, you have to check your own box first, right? If you can really, people that are always stressed and worried about money, it's really hard to help other people when you have that kind of hanging over your head. And when you can check that box and you can, be fulfilled from a financial perspective on your own in yourself, then you're going to help a ton more people than if you're constantly looking over your shoulder thinking about how you're going to, you know, pay the rent.
I will say too, personally, from like what you were talking, we started out. I said, you look great, right? There is an element, and there's been a push lately. I see Charlie Weingroff just did something on Instagram. I know you've been talking about it. You're like, you give your guys crap if they're, a little bit overweight. It's like you're running a gym. You're an adult. You're running a gym. You need to inspire people. There is an element. Are there outliers? Is Mike Boyle an out? Mike will say, you don't need to look at the part. Look at me. I look like Radar from MASH.
Yeah,
And
Mike,
wow,
Mike, Mike ruffled some feathers at the master ride for sure on that one.
but the thing is, he can say that because he was really almost first to market with this stuff, like being a sports performance coach. He's great at what he does. Mike will always say, "Don't look at the outliers." Well, Mike is kind of an outlier when it comes to some of this stuff. But he has done like Mike was a power lifter back in the day. Mike
Yeah.
did a lot of this stuff too. So he can talk about some of that stuff, but in general, it does, like like you said, taking care of yourself, putting the oxygen mask on, right? That's the big cliche term. There's a reason why you do that, right? So you
Yeah.
can take care of other people. But it is important. I think a lot of gym owners start to neglect their own health because of, they get caught in the
Well,
grind.
I do believe, like, and we were just talking about before, like my weight and what I was like in the first Strength Coach TV episode.
Yeah.
I think that was probably around when I was having my first kid, right? And that was like, I remember that was a challenging time where I was like, trying to grow a business, trying to build a business. And Vanessa and she was pregnant and we were eating butter pecan ice cream like every night. I do remember that as a challenge, but I do wish this. I I didn't necessarily have at that point in my life like a role model and a mentor from like a fitness standpoint that was like an older, like I really wish I had a mentor in my life that was when I was 29 having my first kid, that someone was like 45 and they're like watching me gain weight. And I wish I had someone grab me and be like, hey dude, you got to get your shit together
Yeah.
because as you get older, this is going to be even harder. And you need to and I think I would have gotten more serious about it. And I think here's what we do. People like me, they're big dudes, so they hide behind strength and they hide behind lifting, right? And they get strong and they check the box of, oh, I can bench 275 for 8, so I'm good, right? But all the meanwhile, like you can't walk up a flight of stairs without sweating and everything like that. So I, I think that I agree with whatever Charlie said about that. I don't know what he said, but I'm sure it was good and smart.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah, as most things he says. But yeah, I've been pretty vocal about that. And here's the thing too. We have inspired a lot of young gym owners that have had kids that were overweight to get their shit together way fast. Like we have a kid that just spoke at the mastermind, John Carlo. He not only took his business from like 7,000 a month to like 100, but he went to a CEO mastermind where we did this man into incline and he got the crap beat out of him from doing that. And we were making pretty much not making fun of him, but just being like, look at how long it took you to get up that staircase. That's ridiculous. You're a 29-year-old person that shouldn't be that out of shape. And the next year he came back 20 pounds lighter. He beat everybody up the mountain.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. So it's some of it's like that. It's like finding the right mentors and right role models in your life. Um, but yeah, I think it's an important thing. I think it's an important thing for being a role model for your clients, right? I feel like I said this on one of my other videos. CrossFit clients are in real good shape because the owners are all freaking jacked
Yes.
and they want to look like the owners, right? So if you want to have more fit clients, there's a good chance, like just get more fit yourself and they'll follow.
You know, I will say, training some people, not that but for my age, right? When people find out my age, they're like, that's the way I want to be when I'm 57, right?
Benjamin
Because
Button. Yeah, you're taking advantage of really good genetics, Anthony. I think.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um,
Yeah.
so
But you should sell a training program that says look like me when you're
exactly.
94.
um, but we let's go back to this definition of success and break it apart a little bit more because you talked about Vanessa and you talked about the kids, and I know later on in the newsletter you talked about the most important person in the world has to be is for you as Vanessa, it has to be your wife. I was talking to somebody else about this recently. We were talking about diet, for example. It is so much harder when you're married and you're trying to do that, like lose weight on your own. If like whether that's the other spouse is buying certain things that are in the pantry and you walk by the pantry, whether that's giving you a hard time about not having dessert, whether that's you're changing, right? It goes along with the business too, because there's certain things. I know you and I have done a ton. It's how we first met in person, even though we had known each other a little bit, but we met in California. We're both from the East Coast. We met in California at a mastermind, right? At the Cosgrove Mastermind. But we both have done a ton of education, and our wives have to have like at least be behind us and support. I think it's a really underrated piece of the success part.
I I often say that the most important business relationship you have is the relationship with your spouse. And I do believe if I follow her on Instagram. Her name's Cody Sanchez. I really like her. She said some really she's like a real contrarian. She goes against the grain and stuff like that. But she posted something and said something along the lines of a supportive spouse or a good marriage is a superpower in business. And I 100% have felt that for me in the last couple of years. And I can be a real judgmental prick. And I believe that every human being, you included, has a list. And on the left side of the list, there's all the good things about you. And the right side of the list is all the shitty things about you. And every human being, I believe, has the list. And my life changed when I took the list on the left for Vanessa and I focused on that list instead of the other one.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do. Like all of a sudden, like, oh, they didn't do this, oh, they didn't do that. And you try to start to control another person. And the only way to fix, and I don't want to sound like we need fixing. We were fine, but it's the way to transform a relationship is to not control the other person, is to change what you need to change. And that's the big thing I changed. I said, I'm focusing on the list on the left. And I ain't worrying about that list on the right anymore. I gotta let her figure that out. I'm only focused on the list on the left. And it's changed both of our lives.
It's awesome.
sure.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's not really so much like you were trying to change her, but like it's growth. You're trying to grow as a
Right.
couple, right? But I want you to kind of expand on this though, because this seems like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? You just said take care of yourself. Number 21 was focus on yourself less. The more you focus on you and every negative thought or feeling you have, the more miserable you'll be. Shift the focus to others, and be grateful. So just kind of expand on that because I do think it's important balance in really the a segue into what you're talking about.
So I do believe that there's if you were going to grow, you self-development, I believe is a necessary thing for growth. Right. So I'm not saying when you say focus on yourself, I'm not saying stop reading books, stop learning, stop listening to podcasts, like stop, like you told me the book you're reading, letting go, like stop. I'm not saying that. If anything, do that even more. Right. I think Socrates said an unexamined life is not worth living. Right. So I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about as you go through your day and you're looking at your emotions. If you think about all the times that your emotions are kind of all out of whack, it's because you're hyper focusing on how you feel at the moment, right? Oh, I feel anxious. I feel stressed. I feel this. I feel that. And because you're focusing on that. And the number one way to stop feeling what you're feeling, the feeling that you don't want to feel, is to stop thinking about how you're feeling and start doing something. Right? Go do something. Like go do something that needs to be done. Go do something for your business. Go do something for another person. I think the easiest thing to do is get out of a funk, is to go send someone a message of gratitude, right? To get out of yourself, focus on yourself less. When you're in your own head, get out of your own head by going and making someone else's day, whether that's through a text, whether it's through a card. Um, and we were talking about this later, but there's you can't really be in two states at once. Most of us are either in the, fear state or the love state. And when you're in the fear state, you can switch it. And my son just rolled jujitsu at the Pan Am Games. It's a big, big, big deal, right? It's the best kids in the country and down in Florida. So we took a flight to Florida. It's, thing. And what I was doing all week was helping him get out of fear. And what I did was every time he got nervous about it, I had him shift to gratitude because you can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. And so every time, and what do you do when you go from fear? When you go fear, you're focusing on yourself. When you're in gratitude, you're focusing outside of yourself. And so I would have him write down 5 things that he's grateful for every time he got nervous. Every time he said to me, he's like, I feel a little nervous, Dad. I would have him pull out the pen and he would write it down. And I'm telling you this, he didn't end up winning, but he did really well. He had a really good match. And the kid was really good that he went against. And I watched him go out on the mat like he was ready to go, like fully ready to go. Not like an ounce of fear on his face. Like he was focused and ready, and he went out there. He rolled great, and just ended up getting caught in an armbar. But it's I was really proud of him. And the whole week we're leading up to that, of getting out of that focus on myself and how I feel and shifting that to a different state. And the way you can shift that to a different state is using something like gratitude.
Love it. And another good segue, because number 28 was Let It Go. So let's kind of expand on that more. I just told you I was reading that book,
Yeah.
Letting
Oh
Go.
man.
Such
So,
a good book.
this is such good stuff. I mean, again, and if anyone was expecting marketing advice today, I'm sorry. But
Well,
I look at this stuff. I look at this stuff as like,
yeah,
here's the thing. For some people, they don't even need to have this conversation, and this
yeah,
isn't for you. For a
yeah.
lot of people, though, this stuff can like transform your life. Like I know it did for me,
It
right? And
gets in the
so,
way. These thoughts get in the
yeah.
way of everything you're doing if you let them consume you, like you
And that's
said.
why the other thing I realized, Boyle told me to read the book What Happy People Know. And the book talks about, and what happy people know, he talks about how so some people are tall and some people are short, right? And there's some people that are very naturally easily happy, and there's some people that have to work at it a little bit more than others. And I'm one of those people that has to work at it a little more than others. I'm just one of those people. I don't know, maybe I'm just born an asshole or whatever, but I'm just like I have to work at it more. And I need these tools. And I need to know and learn how to let things go because my natural state is I like to hang on to things, right? And so there's two books that kind of combine, right? And the one you talked about, which is Letting Go by David Hawkins. Chapter 2 talks about the mechanism of letting go, and it talks about how to let go. And I believe that's one of the most valuable chapters anyone could ever read in their entire life. Like honestly, I think you cannot read the whole book. Just read that chapter, which is called, the headline is The Mechanism of Letting Go. And basically what it is that when you want to let go of something, if you're, struggling with a past event, if you're, if you just had an argument with a spouse or something and you want to let some go, what you have to do is you have to sit with whatever that is, right? You allow it to come in, you sit with it, and that you don't resist it. The reason why things hang around is because we resist it. And what the mechanism of letting go is sitting with it, letting it be there, letting it run its course, and then letting it pass through. And that's the mechanism of letting go. And then the way it's taught by Michael Singer, which is another book called Untethered Soul or Living Untethered, is to talk about how to relax. And a lot of it is about physical relaxation, being able to relax your body when you are trying to let things go. And if you can't relax your body, it's going to be very hard to let things go. So there's those two resources combined. I thought the Hawkins stuff with the mechanism of letting go teaches you how to do it. But then the Singer, the part of being able to relax your physical body, like literally relaxing your shoulders, literally relaxing your face, all that stuff kind of helps you with the process of letting go. But that's honestly, so I told you I wrote that book for my kids um, last year. I finished it last year. Chapter 1 is learn how to let go. That's chapter 1.
Wow.
That's the first piece of advice I wanted to give my kids because that's
Yeah.
freedom. That's personal freedom is being able to do it.
Yeah. And I think if anybody, if it sounds familiar, it's very similar to the concept of meditation. You're supposed to sit there, thoughts come in, you allow them to come in because it's only natural, but you just let them go, right? Or you just watch them. That's what some way
Well,
people
what
have.
Hawkins does too is he does a really good job of talking about your thoughts. And there's a line in the book that goes, thoughts are fakes. Right. And there's two types of thoughts that you can have. You have thoughts that you create and thoughts you don't create. I'm not talking about the thoughts you create. I'm talking about the thoughts you don't create, the ones that bubble up inside your head. Right. And if you read Singer's book, you'll know where they come from. I'm not going to get into it. This is the conversation. We're scraping the surface of how
Yeah, yeah,
deep some of this shit is.
yeah.
Right. But you have thoughts that just come up, they bubble up, and a lot of times they bother you. And understand that that is just a manifestation of whatever you're storing inside of yourself. It's not like what you're actually thinking. It's just this bubble of stuff. And you shouldn't listen to it. You should just ignore it and let them go, especially the ones that are disturbing.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this in the past. We were talking about those voices in your head. Remember the
Yeah.
four
Yeah.
voices? It's
Hmm.
very similar, and I think it does relate to business tremendously because when you're sitting there and if you don't have that confidence, if you don't have that belief in yourself as well, and to do things and to kind of take risks into pushing yourself right into growing, I think sometimes those thoughts, and you see so many books, so many all of these like uh get out of your fucking head or whatever they use the word fuck. There's like 42 books with the word fuck in the title, right? I mean, it's all about things in your head, but there is something to it from that perspective of when you get all these things in your head and you're trying to run that business there you can't. It's like we said, you got to pull that oxygen mask. So it's not only physical, it's understanding this mental health piece of it as well, which I would consider this part of it some mental health.
Yeah, for sure.
um Vince, let's just we have gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole with
Yeah,
some
we
of that
did.
stuff.
Sorry,
But
this is me and Anthony's therapy session.
there you go. um but I do think, look, the bottom line is it's, Ryan Holiday, the obstacle is the way. There's so many times in business that things are great, things are bad, things are really good, things suck. Then COVID comes along, right? Like we were talking about that last time. Like all of a sudden, there's so many things that come across. You have to understand, you have the letting go piece too, kind of going back to that now. Like, so the obstacles that you're going to come into every single day, right? You said number 42, proudest moments equal the toughest times. So expand on that a little bit.
So one of my favorite authors is a guy named Robert Ringer. And very few people have heard of him or read his stuff, but it's mind-boggling that more haven't. And I'm okay with it. I look at his stuff as like my competitive advantage. That's why I don't talk about it that much. But he is just all about reality. Like he talks about reality and how your ability to embrace reality is the difference between success and failure. It's like people that live in fantasy land, they're not going to achieve the level of success that they want in their life, right? Um, and he has these cornerstones of reality, right? And one of them is that problems are basically parts of life, that problems and challenges and obstacles are going to happen. It's not like if they happen, like they are going to happen. No one in this world has gotten out alive. And the reality is too, is that when you're trying to grow something, when you're trying to grow a business and you're trying to grow whatever you're trying to grow, like the more you try to grow something, the more problems that you're going to face. I guess, yes, if you moved to, Antarctica and plopped yourself down there and, decided that you were going to just basically live and eat fish your entire life and survive that way, yeah, maybe you won't have many problems, right, per se. But if you're trying to grow a business, and that was like a really bad example, I don't know where that came from. But totally didn't make any sense. Because you very could easily just not be able to break the ice. And if you can't break the ice, then you can't
You
get
got
fish, and then you're dead. You got a
you
real
got
big problem on
problems.
your hands. So I should have used something else. But anyway, um, but it's just like the more you try to grow, the more stuff you're going to run into. So I look at my son. So if my son did jujitsu and he just went to classes, he would probably, once in a while get on board, and once in a while, like maybe get tweaked up. But when he goes down to Florida, like there's so many more possible things that could go wrong by facing higher competition and better kids. It's just like, so the more you grow, the more problems that you're going to face, right? And I think you just have to realize that this is like par for the course. And understanding that you don't like wig out and freak out when there's a challenge or when there's a problem, you realize that this is reality. And now it becomes, all right, how do I handle what's been thrown at me? Not, oh my God, how could this have happened? Um, so Ringer talks a lot about reality. It talks about in business the law of averages, right? Like if you want to have a better chance of succeeding, you just got to try more. It's like if you want to get more clients, if you make 50 phone calls instead of five, what the law of averages states that you have a better chance of getting more clients if you made 50 phone calls versus five. Right? That is reality. That's not just a thing of, oh, you should make more calls. Like that is the real reality based thing. So I think for me, it's a lot of reality based thinking. And a lot of it comes down to too is responsibility for yourself, is taking responsibility for your own success. And when I hear someone blame Joe Biden or blame the economy or blame COVID, and I've gotten a lot of it,
Yep.
like I already know that that person is screwed. They're screwed because they have no more power left in their life to be able to make the change. And so yeah, I think reality-based thinking is it's just a healthy way to live.
Awesome. I just want to finish with be a producer because I think all of this stuff, you cannot be a producer. You won't do it. You won't write. You won't make the videos. You won't put stuff out on social media. You won't be consistent if you don't really believe in yourself, if you don't clear some of that stuff. So we've done that now. We've done the work. We now everybody's okay. But talk about because two of them were write every day. It'll make you rich and be a
Yeah.
producer. But just talk about. Do you feel like I know Boyle said that in my book too? Was the first thing he's like he he thinks writing and speaking were the main keys to his. He's very successful, but it wasn't until about 2003, 4, 5 book comes out. He's doing more speaking. All of a sudden, he explodes.
Yeah.
Just talk to us about that stuff.
So, very arrogantly, I have a bookshelf in my house that has all of my books on it. And it's over 10. There's a lot of them. It fills up the whole shelf, like because I put them long ways. And they're all faced out. And I almost feel like weird at doing it because my family members will come over, and my family members like I don't think they really know what I do for a living. Like I don't think like they think I own a gym. Like that's the
Yeah.
extent of what they know, and maybe they think I dabble in some consulting, but I don't think they know it's gotten to the extent of what it is. And maybe they know I've written a couple books, maybe not. I don't even know. But I can like tell when they like come to my house and they see my office and they see the library, they look at this about one shelf and they're like, what a fucking jerk off. He puts his own books on the shelf, you know. And I heard a Ben Settle, who's a really good writer. He told me that he did this. And basically what it does is it shine the light on the things that he had produced. And what it does is showing the work that I've created inspires me to create more. And what I did was on the base of the shelf, I wrote the word produce. And so it's like one of those what are those oh, it's like a label maker.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I got a label maker and it just says the word produce on it. And no one else probably sees that word. I see it, right? But it just reminds me to produce, to go create things in the world. And here's why this is important. The most important thing for you to do to be successful is to continually create more value for other people. To the extent that you create more value for other people, you'll have everything that you ever needed and wanted. And so what producing does is produce things that create value for others. That is one of the reasons why I write an email every day. And I write an email every day because every day I know that I can go to sleep that night knowing I produced at least something. And maybe it was only a 250 word email, but I put something out into the world that day. And so it's this constant level and what it does though, it does take discipline. I have written an email every day for almost 7 years. And so, I mean, after a while, it gets hard not to do. But the reality of it is, um, when you produce things, you are bringing more value to the world. And I think that's kind of why I talk about that. It's the producer versus the consumer, because most people are consumers, right? Most people are consuming other people's stuff. And I want to, for my life, for what I want to be a heavy on the side of producer. And I still want to consume, right? I'm still going to consume stuff. I'm still going to listen to other podcasts. I'm still going to consume books. I mean, I consume a ton of Dan Kennedy stuff, but a lot of my consumption is with the mindset of production, right? And so I consume to produce.
Love
I
it.
don't consume just to consume. When I so I've been uh, watching a lot of WWE documentaries, and I do it while I stretch at night because I'm tight as a drum, and I consume. But now I can know when I watch it in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, how can I pull from this? How can I use this? How can I take this example? I watched Yokozuna last night. You remember Yokozuna? You don't even remember.
No, no.
You only remember like, you know,
Captain Lou.
you're so old. You like only know like
Captain Lou and
Gorilla Monsoon or something
yeah.
like.
Who's the guy that used to eat animal?
Yeah, George
George
the
the
Animal.
Animal.
Oh, dude,
Oh man.
you're really showing your age there.
Captain Lou Albano, Andre the Giant. I
King
mean,
Kong
just Jimmy,
Bundy.
Jimmy Superfly.
Yeah, a funny Jimmy Superfly story is that I used to work out at the same gym as him when I was in eighth grade.
No way.
Hmm.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Um,
But that's so yeah. So it's
yeah,
about production versus consumption, and then using your consumption for the idea of production.
love that. Love that. Um, I don't find I love the idea about the books, right? Because a lot of people wouldn't do that. And you and I talk about Dan Sullivan a lot on here too, and we talked about the gap and the gain. And one thing that I got from that was I recorded because I was kind of looking for to take another step into my into the fitness world, maybe go into a corporate job at one point. And I was like, no one's going to want to hire me, blah, blah, blah. Then I said, no, no. Like I listed that book and I wrote down from day one in the fitness industry, like at Equinox and like all the accomplishments of the podcast, shrinkcoach.com or, and I recorded it and I would listen to it once in a while just to kind of remind myself like, hey, you've done a lot of stuff in this. Cause when you're in the moment, sometimes you forget that, you produced a lot. You tried stuff. Some stuff didn't work but it was great. It was a good idea. It just wasn't executed well, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever. And I think it's a good reminder when you're still looking at I think I'm going to put my book out in the on my bookshelf. My wife, I don't know if my wife will appreciate it, but whatever. Vince, this has been great. I know we didn't talk specifically about marketing, but I truly believe all this stuff relates to being successful in obviously in your own mind. You have to determine what that is. But when you start to feel good about yourself mentally, physically, and within your marriage and your relationships, because there's a ton more in this newsletter.
Yeah,
But
I love to give people the newsletter. I don't know how we could get it to them. I guess I could just give it to you and you can post it in the show notes if you want. The whole thing.
yeah, we could do that. We could post it in the show notes. Let's do it. I already have it. I have it. Remember,
Yeah.
I got yeah. So I'll post that in the show notes. The whole, all 50, because it's pretty good, just like a lot of good bullet points. So
Yeah, and if anyone needs anything, like I'm happy to the whole letting go stuff that we were talking about before and the mindset stuff, like I really enjoy that stuff. And I've had my own challenges and struggles that have led me down the path of learning about that stuff, right? Some of it comes from a deficit. Some of it comes from the
sure.
challenges that I face and the challenges that I've had. Um, and so I'm always open to talking to people about that. So if anyone needs anything, I'm happy to send me personal emails. Just Vince@GabrielFitness.com. Still have a Gabriel Fitness email. I can't I can't bring myself to have an email because all my staff has Vince at Vince Gabriel or like Tom at vincegabriel.com. I can't like bring myself to have a Vince at vincegabriel.com email. I don't know why, but I just
It's a block, man. I mean, you
so
gotta
I'm
overcome
having
it.
whatever. But yeah, Vince at gabrielfitness.com goes right to me. So if anyone needs anything, happy to help. If you want to talk through any of the points on the article, happy to help.
All right, Vince, thanks again for doing this, and we'll talk to you next time, brother.
Later.